It started like any other Sunday afternoon. You know the kind. When the house feels too big, too quiet, too empty. The air is still. The only sound, the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of a wall clock. Tick, 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 each second louder than the last. But for Ethan Miller, silence wasn't new. Silence had become his life. Not because he wanted it that way. Not because he chose it. But because inside that big, beautiful house, lived two little girls who had never heard a single sound. His twin daughters, Emma and Lily. 6 years old. Born deaf. Born perfect. But in a world that never really tried to understand them. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter that day, staring into his coffee like it held all the answers. He didn't drink it. He just stared. Because his mind wasn't in that kitchen. It was somewhere else. In a storm of thoughts he'd been drowning in for months. Am I enough? He asked himself that question more times than he could count. Because the truth was, Ethan was a good man. A strong man. He worked hard. He provided. He built a life for his girls. But love doesn't teach you sign language. Love doesn't tell you how to speak to your own kids when words mean nothing to them. He tried. God, he tried. Late nights in front of the computer screen, watching videos about American Sign Language. Practicing in the bathroom mirror until his hands cramped and his eyes burned from exhaustion. But no matter how much effort he put in, no matter how badly he wanted to bridge that gap, it never felt like enough. Because every time he looked at those little faces, those precious blue eyes staring back at him, he saw something he couldn't bear to see. Confusion. Frustration. And the worst of all, loneliness. A kind of loneliness no child should ever feel. You see, their mother, his wife, she couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle the silence. The responsibility. The constant feeling of being different. 1 year ago, she walked out. No warning. No fight. Just gone. Leaving Ethan to pick up the pieces of a life shattered by a single decision. He promised himself he'd do it all. That he'd be enough for both parents. That his girls would never feel abandoned again. But some days that promise felt like a cruel joke. Because no matter how much he loved them, love didn't make him fluent. Love didn't erase the guilt that came with every blank look on their faces when he got a sign wrong. And little by little, he started to believe maybe they'd be better off without him. So, a few months back, he hired help. Not because he needed someone to scrub floors or wash dishes. But because he needed someone who could give the girls what he couldn't. Connection. Joy. Her name was Marisol. She was young, early 20s, with eyes that smiled before her lips ever did. She walked in that first day with a soft voice and gentle hands, and Ethan wasn't sure if she could handle it. 2 little girls who lived in silence. That's a lot for anyone. But then he saw something. Something he didn't expect. She bent down to their level, and her hands, they moved like water. Smooth. Graceful. Words flowing from her fingertips like poetry. She signed. Fluent. Confident. And the girls' faces lit up like Christmas morning. In that moment, she wasn't just a maid. She was a bridge. A lifeline. From that day on, the twins adored her. She played with them. She taught them songs in sign language. She told them stories with her hands. Things Ethan wished he could do. Things he hated himself for not doing. So what did he do? He buried himself in work. Long nights at the office. Missed dinners. Late emails that could have waited. Anything to avoid the ache of not being enough. Because if he wasn't going to be the father they needed, at least he could provide. At least he could keep the lights on. At least he could convince himself he was doing something right. Until that day. That day changed everything. He came home early. Didn't tell anyone. Wanted to surprise them. Maybe he imagined the twins running to him, their little hands signing daddy. Maybe he thought, for once, he could feel like a hero. But when he pushed open the door, the house wasn't quiet. Not anymore. He heard it before he saw it. Music. Soft. Rhythmic. A melody floating through the air, wrapping around the walls like sunlight through blinds. And when he stepped into the living room, he froze. Marisol was there, dancing. Not just dancing, twirling. Her skirt flaring out, her hair catching the light as she spun in perfect rhythm to the music. Her arms carved shapes in the air like they were painting the song itself. And in front of her, his twins, Emma and Lily, laughing silently, their faces glowing with a joy he hadn't seen in years. Their tiny feet stumbling but determined, their bodies swaying to a beat they couldn't hear. But they felt it. Somehow, they felt it. They copied her moves, clumsy but fearless, their giggles rippling through the room without a sound. And Ethan just stood there. For a moment, something inside him twisted. This was his home, his kids, his life. And yet, here they were, wrapped up in a world that didn't need him. A world he didn't understand. He almost turned around, almost walked out the door like a coward. But then, something happened. Something small. Something that cracked him wide open. Emma looked up, saw him, and smiled. A smile so pure it hurt. And then, she signed one word. Daddy. His throat tightened. His chest ached. And before he could even breathe, Marisol turned too, her eyes wide with panic. She scrambled to pause the music, her hands trembling like she'd been caught doing something forbidden. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice shaky. They wanted to dance. I didn't mean. But Ethan didn't hear the rest. Because he was too busy looking at his kids. Really looking. And for the first time in months, maybe years, he saw joy. Pure. Unfiltered. Radiating from their faces like sunlight after a storm. And in that moment, something inside him shattered. All the pride. All the guilt. Gone. He stepped forward. Slow. Hesitant. Like a man learning to walk again. And then, he did something he never thought he could. He danced. Awkward. Clumsy. 2 left feet and absolutely no rhythm. But when his twins saw him, their faces lit up like fireworks. They ran to him, grabbed his hands, pulled him into their little circle of happiness. And for the first time in forever, he laughed. Not a tired chuckle. Not a polite smile. A real laugh. The kind that shakes something loose inside you. The kind that reminds you what it feels like to be alive. Marisol stood there, watching, her eyes soft and shining with something warm. And in that moment, Ethan realized something. Maybe he didn't have to do this alone. Maybe strength wasn't about carrying the weight by yourself. Maybe, real strength was letting someone in. The song ended. But the laughter didn't. The twins clung to his legs, signing things so fast he could barely keep up. But he tried. God, he tried. And every time he fumbled a sign, they just laughed harder. And he laughed with them. That night, after the kids were in bed, Ethan found Marisol in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes like her life depended on it. She looked up, nervous, like she expected him to fire her. But instead, he said 2 words. Words that changed everything. Thank you. From that day on, things changed. Ethan didn't hide behind work anymore. He came home early. He practiced sign language, not in secret, but with his kids. With Marisol. And slowly, the walls came down. Not just between him and his twins, but between him and his own heart. Months later, people in the neighborhood would see them at the park. A tall man spinning his girls around, laughing like a boy again. And beside him, a young woman signing along, her hands painting music in the air. And they'd wonder, what's their story? But Ethan knew. And he'd never forget. He caught the maid dancing with his deaf twins. But what happened next didn't just melt his heart. It saved it. Because sometimes, family isn't about who shares your blood. Sometimes, it's about who stays when the music stops. Or, in their case, when it never started at all.